The ancient city of Rome witnessed many great figures throughout its long history, but perhaps none so transformative as Gaius Julius Caesar. More than a military genius, more than a brilliant politician, Caesar was the catalyst who forever altered the course of Roman civilization. His actions would ultimately transform a failing republic into history's greatest empire. What drove this patrician nobleman to challenge the very foundations of Rome's political system? How did a man born into privilege become the champion of common citizens and a threat to the established order? And what can Caesar's meteoric rise and violent fall teach us about the nature of power, ambition, and lasting change? Join us as we explore the remarkable life of Julius Caesar, the man who crossed the Rubicon, conquered Gaul, defied the Senate, and changed Rome forever. The Rome that Caesar transformed was a republic in crisis. For centuries, the carefully balanced constitution had maintained stability through a complex system of checks and balances. Yet by the late Roman Republic, this system was breaking down under the weight of imperial expansion, economic inequality, and political corruption. The old rules no longer seemed to apply in a Rome that dominated the Mediterranean world. Caesar's genius was not merely in recognizing this reality, but in having the courage and vision to forge a new path forward, one that would cost him his life but secure his immortality. While his enemies saw only a power-hungry despot, Caesar himself believed he was saving Rome from its own contradictions, creating a more unified, efficient, and just state for all its citizens. Early life and rise to prominence. Julius Caesar was born in July 100 BCE to an ancient patrician family that claimed descent from the goddess Venus and the legendary founder of Rome, Aeneas. Despite their illustrious lineage, the Julii Caesaris were not among Rome's wealthiest or most powerful families when young Gaius Julius was born. His father, also named Gaius Julius Caesar, reached the position of praetor but never achieved the coveted consulship. Caesar's formative years coincided with a period of violent political turbulence. The reformist movements of the Gracchi brothers had been crushed by senatorial conservatives. Then came the bloody rivalry between Marius, who happened to be Caesar's uncle by marriage, and Sulla, a preview of the civil wars that would later engulf Caesar himself. When Sulla emerged victorious and initiated purges of his political enemies in 82 BCE, the young Caesar found himself in mortal danger due to his family connections to Marius. Ordered to divorce his wife, Cornelia, daughter of Sulla's enemy Cinna, Caesar refused, displaying the stubborn defiance that would characterize his entire career. Stripped of his inheritance and forced into hiding, Caesar only survived through the intervention of influential family connections. This early brush with political violence and the arbitrary use of power would profoundly shape Caesar's worldview. When Sulla finally permitted him to return to public life, Caesar chose not to remain in dangerous Rome, but to gain military experience abroad, serving with distinction in Asia Minor and earning the civic crown, Rome's second highest military decoration, for saving the lives of fellow soldiers in battle. Following Sulla's death in 78 BCE, Caesar returned to Rome and launched his public career as a prosecutor, where he demonstrated remarkable oratorical skills. Unlike many aristocrats who viewed public speaking as merely a path to power, Caesar studied rhetoric obsessively under the finest teachers, developing a direct, precise style that captivated audiences. Though not naturally gifted with the most powerful voice, he compensated through perfect delivery and compelling content. Caesar's early political maneuvering revealed his populist tendencies and talent for symbolic gestures. When his Aunt Julia and wife Cornelia died, he gave unprecedented public funeral orations for both women, subtly reminding voters of his connections to the popular Marius. He commissioned public statues of Marius, defying the Sullan establishment that had tried to erase his uncle's memory. After serving as quaestor in Spain, Caesar experienced a famous moment of personal reckoning. Upon seeing a statue of Alexander the Great, he reportedly wept, lamenting that, "At my age, Alexander had already conquered the world, while I have achieved nothing memorable." This burning ambition would drive Caesar to extraordinary achievements, and ultimately lead to his downfall. Caesar's career accelerated after he formed strategic alliances with two of Rome's most powerful men, the immensely wealthy Marcus Licinius Crassus and the military hero Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, Pompey. This informal alliance, later termed the First Triumvirate, combined Crassus's financial resources, Pompey's military prestige, and Caesar's political skills to dominate Roman politics. With their backing, Caesar won election as consul for 59 BCE, where he pushed through legislation benefiting his allies, particularly land grants for Pompey's veterans, despite fierce opposition from conservative senators led by Marcus Porcius Cato. When traditional political tactics failed, Caesar simply had his opponents physically removed from the Senate House, revealing his willingness to bend constitutional norms to achieve his objectives. The First Triumvirate, the alliance known to history as the First Triumvirate, was never a formal office, but rather a private political arrangement among Rome's three most powerful men. Each brought something unique to this partnership. Crassus contributed immense wealth, reputedly the richest man in Roman history. Pompey offered unmatched military prestige from his eastern conquests. And Caesar provided political acumen and popularity with the common people. Their collaboration was cemented through personal connections as well as political convenience. Caesar gave his daughter, Julia, in marriage to Pompey, creating a family bond between the two men that would temporarily overcome their natural rivalry. This arrangement allowed the triumvirs to effectively bypass normal senatorial processes and dominate Roman politics. The primary objective of this alliance was to secure advantages that each man had been unable to obtain through normal political channels. For Caesar, the triumvirate guaranteed him an extraordinary provincial command following his consulship, governance of Cisalpine Gaul, Illyricum, and later Transalpine Gaul for an unprecedented 5-year term, later extended to 10 years. This appointment gave Caesar what he desperately needed, a military command where he could win glory, wealth, and the loyalty of legions. The triumvirate faced fierce resistance from Rome's traditional power brokers, particularly Cato the Younger and Cicero, who correctly recognized this alliance as a threat to the republican system of distributed power. Yet, through a combination of political maneuvering, intimidation, and outright bribery, the triumvirs overcame this opposition and secured their immediate objectives. However, this alliance of convenience contained the seeds of its own destruction. The three men were natural rivals with fundamentally different temperaments and long-term ambitions. Their cooperation depended entirely on each perceiving ongoing advantage in the arrangement. As Caesar's military successes in Gaul accumulated, the balance within the triumvirate began to shift, causing growing anxiety in Rome, particularly for Pompey, who saw his own unmatched military reputation being eclipsed. If you're finding this exploration of ancient Rome's most influential figure fascinating, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit that notification bell to stay updated on our journey through history's greatest figures and civilizations. Military conquests and growing power. Caesar's governorship of Gaul provided the opportunity he had long sought to prove his military genius. The Gallic Wars, which lasted from 58 to 50 BCE, would transform both Gaul and Caesar himself. What began as limited interventions to address security concerns along Roman borders evolved into a systematic conquest of all Gaul, territory corresponding roughly to modern France, Belgium, parts of the Netherlands, Switzerland, and Western Germany. In 8 years of campaigning, Caesar conquered over 800 cities and towns, fought against 3 million adversaries by his own count, and subjugated 300 tribes. He twice invaded Britain, the first Roman commander to do so, and built a bridge across the Rhine to launch punitive expeditions against Germanic tribes, demonstrating Roman power in regions previously untouched by Mediterranean civilization. The scale of Caesar's achievement was unprecedented. He effectively doubled the territory under Roman control and gained access to tremendous wealth through plunder, slave trading, and new tax revenues. Gold from Gaul flooded into Rome, which Caesar used strategically to maintain political alliances and public support during his absence from the capital. Caesar's military innovations were equally impressive. He developed new tactical approaches to deal with the unfamiliar terrain and fighting styles of northern Europe. His legions constructed massive engineering works with astonishing speed, including an 18-mile circumvallation around Alesia that trapped the Gallic leader Vercingetorix. Caesar maintained strict discipline, but also developed extraordinary loyalty among his troops through a combination of shared hardship, generous rewards, and personal courage. He frequently fought alongside his men in the most dangerous situations. Perhaps most brilliantly, Caesar recognized the propaganda value of his conquests. Throughout his campaigns, he composed his famous Commentaries on the Gallic War, De Bello Gallico, written in elegant, accessible Latin that portrayed his actions as defensive and necessary for Rome's security. These dispatches, read aloud in the Forum, kept his name constantly before the Roman people and shaped the narrative of his accomplishments. Written in the third person with apparent objectivity, they nevertheless presented Caesar in the most favorable light possible, a literary and political masterstroke. The consequences of the Gallic Wars were profound. Beyond the territorial expansion, Caesar had forged a professional army personally loyal to him rather than to the Roman state, a development with fateful implications for the Republic. His veterans looked to him, not the Senate, for the land and rewards they had been promised. And Caesar himself had evolved from a skilled politician into a legendary commander with an unrivaled reputation for victory against all odds. As Caesar's glory grew in Gaul, political conditions in Rome deteriorated. In 53 BCE, Crassus was killed at the Battle of Carrhae against the Parthians, removing the balancing force in the triumvirate. The death of Julia in childbirth in 54 BCE severed the family connection between Caesar and Pompey. Without these stabilizing influences, the natural rivalry between Rome's two greatest generals intensified. The road to civil war. With Crassus dead and Julia's moderating influence gone, the political balance in Rome shifted dramatically. Pompey, once Caesar's ally, gradually aligned himself with the Optimates, conservative senators who feared Caesar's growing power and popularity. This faction, led by Cato and supported by orators like Cicero, viewed Caesar as an existential threat to the republican system of government. Their concerns were not unfounded. Caesar had amassed extraordinary personal power through his Gallic conquests, unmatched military glory, immense wealth, and the devoted loyalty of battle-hardened legions. Perhaps most dangerous of all, he had demonstrated a willingness to circumvent traditional political constraints when they impeded his ambitions. The immediate constitutional crisis centered on Caesar's desire to stand for consul a second time, without returning to Rome as a private citizen. Roman law required candidates for consul to appear in person, but Caesar knew that without his army's protection, he would face prosecution for various alleged irregularities during his previous consulship. His enemies in the Senate insisted he lay down his command and return to Rome before the elections, which would leave him vulnerable to legal attacks that could end his career. Caesar proposed a compromise. Both he and Pompey would simultaneously give up their military commands. This suggestion, seemingly reasonable, was designed to highlight the double standard his opponents were applying. If Caesar was dangerous with an army, why wasn't Pompey? The Senate, however, rejected these terms, and instead declared that Caesar must disband his legions by a specific date or be declared a public enemy. As the constitutional crisis deepened, Caesar made a final attempt at negotiation in January 49 BCE. he offered to retain only a single legion and the governorship of Illyricum. This too was rejected. The Senate, now firmly under the influence of Caesar's enemies, passed the Senatus Consultum Ultimum, the ultimate decree that authorized magistrates to use any means necessary to protect the Republic from threats. They ordered Pompey to defend Rome against Caesar. The die was cast. On January 10th, 49 BCE, Caesar and a single legion approached the Rubicon River, the boundary between his province of Cisalpine Gaul and Italy proper. Roman law forbade a general from bringing troops into Italy. Crossing this small stream would constitute an act of war against the Roman state. According to Suetonius, Caesar paused briefly at the river's edge and uttered the famous phrase, "Alea iacta est," the die is cast, before leading his troops across. This momentous decision transformed a political dispute into armed conflict. Caesar later justified his action by claiming he sought to protect both his own dignitas, personal honor and standing, and the rights of the tribunes who had been expelled from Rome for defending him. In reality, he had concluded that his enemies would never allow him to operate within the normal political system again. His only choices were civil war or personal destruction. Caesar's crossing of the Rubicon has become a metaphor for any irrevocable decision. For Rome, it marked the point of no return in the Republic's terminal crisis, the moment when political competition finally and definitively gave way to armed conflict between Roman armies. The Civil War and Caesar's rise to power. When Caesar crossed the Rubicon, the Roman Republic slid into civil war. But what followed was a masterclass in speed, strategy, and political genius. With just one legion, Caesar quickly swept through Italy. Cities surrendered without a fight, and Pompey's new recruits deserted him in fear. People expected Caesar to act like a new Sulla, a brutal dictator, but he shocked everyone with his clementia, or mercy. He pardoned his enemies, disarming them with kindness and winning political capital instead of just battles. Rather than defending Rome, Pompey chose to flee to Greece, hoping to gather strength from the east. But this retreat gave Caesar a huge psychological advantage. After securing Italy, Caesar marched to Spain and defeated Pompey's supporters at Ilerda. Again, he showed mercy. Many of the defeated soldiers eventually joined him. Then came the boldest move yet. Caesar invaded Greece, risking everything by crossing the sea despite Pompey's superior navy. At Pharsalus in 48 BCE, the decisive battle unfolded. Caesar's hidden fourth line of elite troops crushed Pompey's cavalry, turning the tide. Pompey fled to Egypt, where he was killed before Caesar could even reach him. When Caesar was presented with Pompey's severed head, he reportedly wept. Whether out of real grief or political performance, no one knows for sure. In Egypt, Caesar supported Cleopatra in her power struggle and swiftly crushed Pharnaces II of Pontus, declaring his victory with the legendary line, "Veni, vidi, vici." I came, I saw, I conquered. Victories at Thapsus, Africa, and Munda, Spain, followed. By 45 BCE, Caesar had returned to Rome as the undisputed master of the Roman world. Caesar's reforms and political changes. But Caesar didn't just celebrate, he transformed Rome. He reduced debt, resettled poor citizens into new colonies, and extended Roman citizenship to people in Gaul and Spain. He reformed the grain dole, cutting off those who didn't truly need it, and launched massive public works to reduce unemployment. He increased the Senate from 600 to 900 members, adding provincial leaders and veterans. This angered traditional elites, but made the Senate more representative of the empire. One of his most lasting reforms was the Julian calendar, replacing the outdated lunar system with a solar one, versions of which are still used today. He also streamlined the corrupt tax system and introduced stricter anti-corruption laws. At the same time, Caesar built his personal image. His face appeared on coins, statues showed him as a god, and his birth month was renamed July. But there were warning signs. During the Lupercalia festival, Mark Antony offered him a crown, which Caesar publicly refused. Still, many believed monarchy was on his mind. Assassination and aftermath. The concentration of power worried many senators. A conspiracy was formed, ironically including men like Brutus and Cassius, whom Caesar had once pardoned. On the Ides of March, 44 BCE, Caesar was stabbed 23 times in the Senate. Legend says he saw Brutus and gave up fighting back. Whether he said, "Et tu, Brute," is still debated. The assassins thought they had saved the Republic, but instead they doomed it. The public didn't rise in support. In fact, Mark Antony's fiery funeral speech turned the crowd against the killers, and riots broke out in Rome. Soon, Caesar's grandnephew Octavian, later Augustus, rose to power, defeating Brutus, Cassius, and Antony. The Republic never recovered. It transformed into an empire, with Caesar's name becoming a title for emperors: Caesar, Kaiser, Czar. Today, historians still debate, was Caesar a tyrant who destroyed democracy or a visionary who reformed a broken system? One thing's certain, his legacy changed the world forever. Conclusion: Julius Caesar's life marked the turning point from the Roman Republic to the Roman Empire, reshaping Western civilization. Though born into aristocracy, he championed the people, showing both ambition and reformist vision. He expanded Rome's territories, restructured its institutions, and left a legacy that lasted millennia, from the Julian calendar to the enduring title Caesar. His willingness to defy tradition made him both a transformative leader and a controversial figure. His assassination highlighted the danger that bold reforms can provoke, raising timeless questions about power, change, and ambition. Caesar remains a symbol of complex leadership, brilliant, flawed, and unforgettable. If you enjoyed this journey through Caesar's life, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to explore more stories from history. Thanks for watching.